Hey all, Mike here. Just wanted to let you all know that we are on Patreon. Yes, that's right. The Creative Risk Podcast is on Patreon. Y'all got to get access to these wild perks that are on there, including discounts to apparel and one-on-one coaching with Joshua and myself, as well as exclusive content from our creative startup e-learning course, as well as weekly gays, we call them weekly get at it, which are short motivational episodes to get your week off to a great start, as well as bonus full-length episodes of the Creative Risk Podcast. It's an awesome community to be a part of with great content and perks, so come join us for as little as $5 a month. And regardless, be sure you follow us on social media, and also like and subscribe to our YouTube or to wherever you're listening to on this podcast.
For those of you tuning in, every time we do a podcast episode, there's a different technical snafu. It doesn't really matter. It could be anything. It could be my headphones. It could be the camera. It could be the system. Riverside, you suck. We never want your sponsorship, Riverside. Don't use Riverside to record podcasts.
And Joshua's freaking out because the humidifiers in the background, and it's just so unprofessional.
Can you hear it?
No, I can't. Or whatever. What were you hiding behind the curtain? Like a box?
Oh, no. I wasn't. It was actually that the ladder.
The ladder got, which
but
is,
what's fun,
I mean, you
funny
might
is
as well live in a crack house.
You talk openly about how you don't have a strong visual eye. That's not like you're like, at least you don't spend a lot of time on that. But also, here's why I would disagree with that. I think you do have a pretty strong visual eye. Meaning, and that you care about things, because when it comes to like design things or like clothing or like look out for some cool apparel from us soon, you have like a point of view, and like you have like a good sense of style. I think the differences between us when it comes to like visual aesthetics is maybe in the nuance of it, like clutter. Where like a messy vibe is like, which is like kind of ironic because I'm actually a fairly cluttered person. Michael, my boyfriend Michael, is hates clutter. Anyway, I think like that stuff like doesn't matter quite as much to you as long as like the general energy and vibe is there. Did that make sense? Would you agree with that?
Yes, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Because I'm like, yeah, I don't want people to look at my ladder that's out, and it just feels, I don't know, feels disrespectful to you all wonderful people out there. But that's my own bullshit.
And yes, we need to continue to have patience with each other and with where we are. That's what it is. It's yeah.
No, because now we're really getting it. Now we're really having fun with this podcast, and now we're like wanting some fancy shit. Now we're like wanting like setups and like some nicer equipment. We were talking about because we want to do these more in person. LABOD's in Connecticut again. He's always home. Never likes to be in New York, so he's in Connecticut, and
That's
so
true.
we're recording from afar again. But we want to do in person, which means you sort of need like 3 cameras. So anyway, we're talking lots of production stuff. One day there'll be a costume design. Just you wait. There's going to be all kinds of elements.
I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if where we end up is eventually just doing it like sterile white like bubbles.
If you heard our conversation, that's a big LOL. That's what you take away from our conversations. I'm like, let me move the ladder from my background, and you're like, we're gonna end up like in a sleek white.
An Apple store.
Well, welcome to Creative Risk, y'all, where we talk about art, entrepreneurialism, and everything in between. Actually, say something about that word, y'all. So I was working on this new show this past week, and one of the writers, he had this character that was sort of like mocking the Southern character and would use y'all, like, hey, y'all, or y'all want to go over there. But it was always only talking to one person. And I said to them, because I was directing him, we were making changes as we were going. I said to them, I was like, why do you use y'all? Why isn't it you wanna whatever, like, why is it y'all? And he was like, well, that's what it is. It's y'all. I'm like, y'all is you all, like more than one person. Am I wrong about this? Like, if you were talking to me, would you say,
Is he from the
y'all?
South?
No.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I I don't know. I don't know what they do down there in them parts, because I'm sure that if you told me like I'm sure that if you told me that they would say y'all referencing one person, I'd be like, if somebody said that and they were from, whatever, Charleston, South Carolina, or from fucking Texas, I'd be like, okay, that's what you do. People do weird slang shit like that. Like, so
Well,
I would not be,
I
it's not
use y'all.
grammatically correct, but it's not, but what I'm trying to say is it's not grammatically correct, but maybe they do, if somebody like, if so, Carolina does this thing where it's like if somebody does something and she like owns them or something, she goes, how to do it to them. She always goes, how to do it to them. Like, even though them
But that makes
is,
sense.
yeah, I don't know. Who knows? But I will say, Northerners don't know how to write. I was just having a conversation with somebody about a new musical that takes place in the South. That's like Broadway, trying to be Broadway bound, but the book apparently is not good. And it was all written by like, New York people about Southerners, and it's just like, we don't, there's just
No, I
we
know.
disrespect. They should succeed from us.
The
That's
South?
the South should succeed from us.
Is it secede or succeed? Which one is it?
Both.
Succession. No,
No,
I think
it's secede.
secede, like suspect, secede.
Yeah, secede.
Anywho,
Anyway,
y'all, I'm only talking to one person when I say that, y'all. So each of you gets your own individual y'all. Today, we are talking about, I actually do think this is an important topic for any business, but certainly us artists, and it's certainly a big question, standing out as an actor. That can mean a lot of different things in a lot of different contexts, but to stand out as an actor, what does that mean, and how do you really make that work for yourself?
what is that when you first hear those words, standing out as an actor? What are like your initial like feelings about that?
Me?
Like, yeah, like for me, it's like it's something you like when I hear standing out as an actor. It sounds like to me like it brings up feelings of it's funny, right? Because I think it circles back to this thing of like if you're considering how you're standing out, which we know we have to do. I don't think anybody is going to argue like that standing out is something that is an ideal thing to be doing. Um, but the question is can you actively and intentionally, should you be aware of that? Or is it like, I do me and I either stand out or I don't, or it's like, whatever, there was that guy. Do you got saw the thing I sent you about that guy who like kind of dissed Rick Rubin, what's his name? Collier, that guy who
No.
apparently, this guy, Jacob Collier, is that his name? Does that name sound familiar to you?
Does sound
He's a
familiar, yeah.
musician. Apparently, he's like an incredible fucking musician. And he basically like, and he's like 26, and I heard somebody reference him. He's like 2024 Mozart, basically. He's like kind of like a prodigy and he can do all this shit. But he basically called out Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin is the creative act. He was like, I don't think it really applies to artists. He's like, I think it applies to like business people. He's like, because who says artists can't think about, because basically Rick Rubin is like, don't think about anybody on the outside. Just like basically your art is a diary entry that nobody else is going to see. And you shouldn't think about how it's going to affect others or how it's going to be received or da, 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 da. That's basically what the creative act. I mean, I've audio booked like half of it, but that was a lot of what was. And this guy was basically calling that out and being like, I don't agree with that at all. He's like, I think you should consider audience. How does this relate to today's topic? When you say standing out as an actor, I think kind of like an old school artsy fartsy, let's say false integrity mindset. I guess it's like well, I shouldn't have to try to stand out. Me trying to stand out in a conscious way is me sort of poisoning something authentic and unique, authentic, and it's me trying to da 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 da.
Well, what is
You
that?
know
But
what I
what is
mean?
that? Well, what is that poison? Your mic's a little hot, by the way. What does that
Okay.
poison? What does that poison mean? Meaning, like you, like even thinking about that gets in your way, essentially. Like if you're
Yeah, well,
focusing on standing out.
yeah, you're basically what you're doing is you're basically saying you shouldn't think about how you're received by others. You shouldn't, and I have quotation marks for the audio people, you shouldn't be thinking about how your art is received or how your artistry is received by others. So when you're trying to stand out as an actor, that is quite literally you considering how am I being received, literally comparing your, I would argue inherent in that is comparing yourself to other actors. And I think that's sort of like the pure mindset is like you shouldn't even be thinking about how you, what's up with the balloons now? Look at that. Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
What the fuck was that?
I've seen this a few times. I had an audition
Is
the
it
day
this? Like, how did
I
that
had an
happen?
audition the
Anyway.
day where the casting director filmed a tape. They must have done it on Zoom where they were recording like what the instructions were. And all these things kept popping up and they just was killing me.
What's happened when you
But
do thumbs up?
yes,
That
I think you're right
happens
about
there.
that too.
See, now it's not happening now. Fuck. Anyway, but you know what I
So,
mean?
Yes, but let's
I'm not
talk
saying
about
I
this
agree with
because
it, but
no, but this is interesting because let's talk about just the pure concept of what it means to stand out as an actor from a business perspective. So meaning, again, take any other business in the world and even take your own creative business in terms of what your team would be doing, reps and publicists, etc. Even if you don't want to do this. So even I'm sort of, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm saying, how could you not? Because any business in the world, you want someone to pay you to sing your song, to do your little monologue, to do your little scene, to pay your phone bill. That's what you're asking people to do. Therefore,
right.
there has to be some consideration, again, like any business, of what differentiates you from your competitors, right? And that could be a lot of, just to stay right off the bat, it doesn't just mean talent. So, for example, you saw I wrote this down here. Have you seen that woman, Kim Hale? She's like 60s something, and she just moved back
No.
to New York. She's an older woman. She's a dancer primarily. She was based in LA, but she just moved back to New York to sort of pursue her dreams of being on Broadway. So she's building this, and she's documenting it all on TikTok and Instagram, and she's building a big following. And she's this really like vivacious energy. I say this because for me, part of what's just differentiating her, what's having her stand out, is how she's using socials, sharing her story, getting people excited to like see this 60-something-year-old woman finally achieve her dream of being on Broadway. So I say it because a differentiator isn't necessarily just, oh, I'm so different because I'm bit better. A differentiator, could simply be, I was listening to a Gary Vee podcast episode where we had a guy on because he was answering a bunch of questions, and the guy was like, we're a car wash, but we're also a barbershop. So you come get your car washed and you get your hair cut. And Gary Vee was like, I love it. He's like, you could have 5,000 chains, 5,000 operations, all over the country. Just a unique concept. Forget even the quality of it for a second. There's so many ways to consider how you might stand out. So with that said, to get back to your question, I would argue that while too much of an emphasis on the conceit of standing out, of being different, could get in the way, that ultimately it really is a necessary consideration, even if someone might tell themselves it's not. Do you disagree with that?
I agree with that. I mean, something that I just want to kind of, not to just gloss over here, is that we're using the word we're using as opposed to saying standing out, which I think is helpful but not specific. Well, not helpful because it's not as specific. We're talking quite literally about differentiators. So what is something you are, for your point, either doing from a business strategy perspective or from like, something inherent in your talent or inherent in your personality that is different. So standing out means having differentiators, being different in some way. So just to answer to come up with the thesis of how do you stand out as an actor, it's about differentiating yourself, being different from everybody else. And there's many ways to do that. And in terms of, do we need to consider this? Look, the thing that I would argue at the end of the day, just like with, all strategy, at the end of the day, yes, at the end of the day, we need to make art and be the best actors and artists we can be. That's primary. That's number one. Everything else, including, I would argue, community probably not self-producing because that is making art, but community cultivation, marketing, everything else is supplemental to that, is to the goal being the best artist you can be, blah, 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 blah. So this idea of differentiating yourself, do I think it is 100% necessary to be an artist to do this? Of course not. No. Do I think that in this oversaturated moment where quite literally we are inundated with content all the time, just think about where people's attention is at any given fucking moment. I mean, I was just thinking about this the other, people are going on 5 different fucking social media platforms. People are fucking lighting themselves on fire, fucking, in the middle of the street. Like, there's a fucking war. We're about to be pulled into World War III in the Middle East. Why the fuck am I saying this? I'm saying this because how are you going to get attention in a moment where there is information overload, where people can go wherever the fuck they want to get they can give their attention to a billion different things? How are you going to garner attention?
Well, to be clear,
not by playing it safe and to be clear, back.
You said, do you need to stand out to be an artist? No, that's not the question. Of course not. But again, is this a hobby or is this a career? You remember the person I met with not too long ago to talk about that, and I said they were very offended when I said that. That I said I felt like they were treating their career like a hobby. But I just want to be clear. You just sort of said
Who was this? Just say I'll bleep it out.
That I was in a free consult with.
Oh, really? She got offended by that?
Well, of course. Wouldn't you be offended? I didn't even mean it offensively, but I was like, I think your career is more of a hobby right now than a career. But I'm saying that because, to your point, and again, even if you don't focus on it and it happens naturally, organic, which we all want. We all want our oh so special, beautiful, very precious talent to be carried to the top, without us having to do much of anything. Let the magic do its magic. But if even if that does happen, then and we're carried away by some big breakout role, and then our teams come in and continue to pitch the Jeremy Strong Succession thing we always talk about, the articles about him, being oh so method. It's of course, this is always the game. This is the game to be played. And this is the problem I think developmental artists have, LABOD. This is the problem I think they have. It's easier to understand this when you have some traction and you have some heat, and you just start to get yourself in that mindset. For a lot of developmental artists in particular, I think it's hard to think about these things because it feels so false. And I think there's a lack of confidence that goes into it. A lack of I don't want to do
your
that.
Angle. Well, understanding that you have to be forward. And this is the other thing, right? Is that we always say it's like, if you don't tell your story, somebody else is going to tell it for you.
Sure.
And I really believe, kind of going back to what I was saying in terms of in this moment where it's highly competitive, where, the middle class is being eliminated, the workaday actor is being eliminated basically from the equation. There's the haves and the have-nots in this business, right? And so, either you're a have-not or you're a have, and these are extreme, but this is also market reality. This is also just the market reality. So if you want to be at the top of that pile, people are going to, you need to figure out a way to differentiate yourself and to be bold and to be bold and audacious in some sort of way. What's interesting about that Kim Hale example, I mean, what a unique story that has nothing to do with her talent. I don't even, is she talented? I'm curious. Who the fuck knows? But it's like, a 60-year-old woman on TikTok documenting who, when most people, when anybody that age has given up that dream, and that is a unique story of somebody and it is different. And again, what's interesting about it is it has nothing to do with her talent. It's purely the story around her. And so when we talk about differentiators, which we'll get into now, as you said, it can have sometimes it has to do with your talent, sometimes it has to do with your personality, sometimes it has to do with your story and circumstance.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And just to be clear, what you're sort of, just to underline the point, the way that you stand out could come via strategies, could come via what your story is, could come via your talent. But let's talk about some of these specific ones. One of the ways, we have this phrase we talk about when it comes to marketing, especially with artists, is, are you innovating or are you dominating? Right? So are you bringing something brand new to the table, or are you saying you are the best of, so to speak, right? We've used like Jefferson Mays as an example before of like, if you're going to play the man of 1,000 faces game in the theater and you're saying, I'm it. Okay, well, great. Then you've got to be better than Jefferson Mays. You've got to
You're saying I'm the most emotionally available actor ever. That's not a unique story, I would argue. You're not innovating, but you need to, as you say, if you're leading with I'm a method actor who's that's not a unique story, right? But you can if you're gonna tell a story, if your angle is an angle that's been done before, you need to be the best at it. That's you need to dominate at that, and that goes for skills and it goes for just general. I would argue, look, and I would argue that this woman, Kim Hale, that you mentioned, she falls into this innovation camp because
I agree.
It's a 60-year-old woman really trying to actively pursue a career on Broadway and is open about it. That is something we haven't. Of course, there's plenty of people out there probably in her shoes who have that, but they're not. It is different to see somebody so forward-footed. That is a different story, right? That is a different that's something we haven't seen before. I would argue that if an actor is telling a story of, I'm Tom Cruise meets Seth Rogen, right? That's sort of like, that's sort of what I lead with is I'm like, that is something I can't name anybody who's really like that. So you can always innovate in terms of the story you're bringing to the table around your person and your artistry, or innovate in terms of, there's that guy who's blowing up, the guy, Coleman Domingo's doing that movie Sing Sing, right? About like prison, about like a guy who does theater at prisons, and it's like the breakout star of that is this guy who I think also wrote the movie, but it was definitely based on his life, who was, that was his story. He was in jail for many years for something, and now he's like a breakout indie star. And that is it looks he looks like a good act from the trailer and everything looks really good, but that's unique. That's a unique, innovative spin. That's something that I can latch onto and go, who is that? Like, there's not many guys out there who have that story.
And to be clear, obviously this is going to defer person to person based on goals. And what I mean by that is if, we always talk about the person who came and was like, I want to be a Marvel star. I want to be a global phenomenon. Okay, well, if you want to do that, that means you're amassing a huge audience. So how are you standing out? Oh, I want to be the star of the Chicago theater scene. A little different and easier than standing out. But I say this because more often than not, we work with people with big goals. I want to be on Broadway. I want to be a series regular. Okay, well, really asking yourself, how every step of the way am I considering how I'm being leveraged and positioned in a way that's going to allow me to stay front and center, including to your point about Kim Hale and the story thing, just to say what we love about that. I follow her now because I'm like, I hope she makes it. I hope she gets into Chicago. I mean, I'm talking about her.
Right.
Who is this woman? And now all of
Right.
a sudden, like there are people like, so you don't think that the zeitgeist, whatever that zeitgeist is, that Stewart, I think it's still Benton Whitley actually now, who still casts it. I don't know how that split up when they split up, but when they are, you don't think they're aware of that and thinking, oh, do we do some stunt casting, which Chicago's known for anyway, and put her in the show to drum up ticket sales because she now has a following and she's going to post about it nonstop. That's
Right.
part of what is allowing her to stand out, is just the story and the how.
And I would argue that, look, even if you don't have big goals, like you need to take the New York theater, which is competitive.
Absolutely.
How are you standing out from the crowd? How are you, again, and I hope that we're being clear that this can look like, what we're talking about now is innovation, and innovation in some way. What we haven't cleared up is that this is innovation in terms of the story you're telling around your, there it is, the story you're telling around your journey, your personhood, your artistry, right? So there's that. There's also your skill sets, right? Which is sort of the next thing here. It's like, okay, if you really have, I do sign language rap. That is a skill set. I think about Luis Quintero, who went to School of the Arts.
I was just messaging with him.
Who is, I think is really, he is making a name for himself in the classical theater space, I would argue.
Really is.
And it's because because of his rap skills, because of rap and beatbox. Oh, that's why 100%. Well, his show is being produced.
I saw that
Bedlam and Red Bull. It's his rap Medea. Like, that's how he's been positioning himself. It's a skill set that in the context of classical theater is highly unique skill set. Right. Whereas I think that it's a similar, not to whatever, I think it's a similar space that I stand out in, classical theater, but it's not, I am a skilled actor, but it's not based off of my skills. It's based off of my point of view. I think I bring a unique point of view to that space that most people don't on the work, that most people don't bring to that space.
But let me just say something about the skill sets thing too for a moment, because while I actually don't really think, I think this is probably a more basic way that people think, oh, this is how I stand out, by adding more special skills. I don't really prescribe to that fully. However, I do think that just like any business would, the only reason Amazon became Amazon is because they said, okay, we're no longer just going to sell books. If we want to become the lead, household, come to us for everything, they had to add on other services and considerations. And now there's a pharmacy and grocery shopping. Why do I say that? Because I do think that part of standing out as a business is, here's a shitty example. You're a wedding planner. Okay, great. Well, you're going to be a wedding planner, but part of what you're going to do down the road is you're going to take out a loan and you're going to actually invest in a venue. They don't have to use the venue. They could just use your services, but you also have a venue I'm saying it, adding in other additions.
Well, I think you're talking about two, because let me tell you where I think a skill set could be used. There's no such thing as a unique skill set. I mean, there is if you dominate. So if I'm the most emotionally available actor on the planet, then that's unique. Emotional availability itself is not a unique differentiator. However, let's take jiu-jitsu. Okay, everybody's fucking knows jiu-jitsu now. Me knowing jujitsu, I think
Totally.
is interesting, but it doesn't really add. Whereas if some like musical theater twink knows jujitsu, that's a little more interesting. That's a
Sure.
little bit more of a differentiate. Again, this goes to something we always talk about, which is overall marketing strategy. What is unique about you and in what context?
Sure.
Rap
Sure.
and beatboxing is not a unique skill set. I think it becomes unique when you bring it to the classical theater space because not a lot of people there are fucking with it. So
Of course.
I think if your unique skills can complement each other, where you're trying to break in and persona elements in a way that can create something that is completely different, but the skills themselves I think are not differentiators on their whole. It's how they feed into the
I
story.
totally agree. I totally agree. I guess I'm really thinking about like piano. Piano for me has been a constant differentiator.
That's fair.
Like I remember I auditioned for this
That's
production
totally
of Twelfth Night for Sebastian when I was younger, and I wasn't really right for it. But before I left, I remember the artistic director I was auditioning for, Robert Richmond, who just died recently, that director. But anyway, the artistic director said, Joshua, before you go, don't you play piano? And I said, yes. And they said, would you play something? And I sat down and I played something and I
You're
got cast in the show. And I say it just because I'm just going, what are some micro examples
No,
of
you're
ways
100%
that you
right.
go, how do I
If you play
differentiate?
guitar, you're now eligible for like 10 more jobs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, but now let's talk about other ways in relation to just overall presence. The words you have here with clout, cachet, and credibility, I think they're all good words in relation to this.
Yes, I think that a big differentiator, a way you can stand out and differentiate yourself and subsequently stand out comes in the form of basically, there's not a lot of people with having clout, credibility, and cachet in this business is unique. It is unique. It's not, most people in this business don't have clout, credibility, and cachet.
That's
So
right.
if you are, most people are struggling. Most people are. So if you're able to build any sort of credibility, either by, who you hang out with, by who's featuring you and whatever, that is another way that you can begin to differentiate yourself from just the general masses in some ways.
Well, let's be clear. Let's be clear, because I think there's actually kind of all mean something differently. On a very basic sense, something like credibility would speak to like your resume, and I mean that's a form of where you look at someone's resume and you go, oh, they're the real deal. They can do it. But and so that might make someone stand out more. We always, I was talking to someone who worked with you actually the other day about some television stuff. They don't even have a co-star yet they're constantly going out for series regulars and guest stars. No problem. Like that's doesn't mean you can't get there. But if you have 3 co-stars under your belt, you're more likely to stand out from the rest of the competition.
Well, because literally you've taken yourself, it's like a pyramid. It's like you've taken there's so many people who have not done that, and now you've taken yourself to a level of a smaller group of people who have at least done that.
Exactly.
While it is not unique, it's different. You put yourself into a smaller pool of people.
Exactly.
Even if it's just a little smaller. Right.
But the other ways, part of, for me, the big thing that this is an online presence, but I don't just mean like online social media. I'm talking like, part of what can differentiate you is if I look up LABOD or Joshua Morgan or Nancy Drew, it doesn't matter. What is out there that tells me a story that goes, oh, this person is essentially no bullshit. One of the ways that you can do this is a game, that I've played and that I think I'm not unique here, but early on playing the Publicist game, both in terms of that digital footprint because of just press, because there really is no such thing as bad press in terms of any podcast, any online publication,
right,
anything that you can sort of use to push your name out there. The other thing publicists can help do is they can get you into events. screenings, openings, da 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 da. You know, so
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even know that. That makes sense. They get you into like opening night of cabaret or whatever the fuck. That's their job, is to try and get you in there or whatever the fuck.
exactly, because a lot of times these events, take a some sort of big screening in Hollywood. Well, if they want the house packed, so while all the creators are going to get their tickets, then they're going to try to fill the house with people.
Well, you know what's fascinating about that is because probably more people have publicists than we think. Let me just say that. And we're talking about two different things with the publicists. We're talking about it in terms of a strategy to maybe get out a unique, a unique story about yourself. So you're using the publicist to tell the differentiating story about yourself, which could be, I was in jail and now I'm an actor. That's my differentiator, and I'm going to use the publicist to get that story out there. But the other is the publicist itself can be a differentiator, because how many actors, again, you're putting yourself into a smaller pool. If you're able to go to screenings, if you're able to go to events, openings, if you do have a feature in the New York Times, or you're putting yourself into a smaller pool of people. You're becoming
if I could afford it, I'd have one full time.
Of course.
Full time. Because the publicist that I tend to work with, Lisa Goldberg, I'll shout her out, she's great, but still, at least when I was still a few $1,000s a month. And so it's
like,
not
how much you talking, like two? Is it like 2,000 a month? Or
I was paying 25, but it's been a minute, so I'm sure she's more expensive.
But like, even you think an entry level, you think it's like probably like an entry level, like how much do you think a publicist is?
Well, I think they're going to range, depending on the scope of work, from everything from $750, $150 a month, which is cheap, but depends on the scope of work, to $10,000. I mean, everything's it's gonna really run the gamut, depending on also the scope of the work. I mean, this is, just to be clear, Tonys were announced today as of recording. You don't think they'd be dumbos if pretty much everybody on that nomination list doesn't go out and immediately start working with a publicist if they're not, because that's the game. So
and quite literally what we're saying, again, just to reiterate, is that you're either using the publicist to tell the different story about yourself, but also just having somebody who was able to get you press. That makes you different, because most people walking around, most of us are not getting featured in X New York Times or X articles or going to X events, or most of us that is not happening to us. And so, the other way that you're going to build, I think you can differentiate yourself by using credibility and cachet, which is what this is kind of all circling around, is who you hang out with. If you are, and it sounds a little sleazy, but if you are being seen with people who are hard to access, let's say that, people who are not, not any Tom, Dick, or Harry can sort of relate to, that is another way that you differentiate yourself. If you're able to get, a great example, like you said, it's like, there was somebody that we both know who went to the cabaret opening, who I was like surprised that they were there. I was like, oh, wow. That person is now differentiated. They've elevated a bit in my mind, right? They're rightfully or wrongfully, but
yes,
they've differentiated themselves a bit, because I didn't know that they could get into those kinds of rooms.
Exactly.
So whether we like it or not, like who you associate with, who you're being seen with, is a differentiator. And by the way, I always use this fucking example. at nauseum, but there's a big indie films star, and his friends are all like, non-actors who are kind of like, for lack of putting it, like, just kind of like knock around street dudes, it seems. That differentiates him. Differentiates him, because most artists hang out with other artists. They're not actually hanging out with. So that's different than credibility and cachet, which is,
No, the
I think,
relationships
yeah,
that you have absolutely play a role. Going back to the Kim Hale example, again, just to say in 2024, social media, specifically an owned audience, is I would argue top three largest differentiators
I agree.
for pretty much, again, any business alive today, especially for artists. Your your social media following, and it's funny, I think you and I have been on a real journey over the past few years in talking about this
Past few
because
weeks.
well, past few weeks, but I mean past few years, and
Oh
so
yeah,
much
sure.
as um uh easier said than done.
Of course.
Also, to your point about, do you have to stand out to be an artist? Well, you don't have to have a social media following to be an artist, but again, dependent on what your goals are. If you don't have goals to make $250,000 a year from your art per se, if that's not what your art is about commercializing it, monetizing it, then of course, live your life, go paint your fucking thing and or sing your song. Who cares? But to
Right.
the but in today's day and age, when people are looking for that credibility, when they're looking for examples of work, when they're looking for relevance, your social media following is such a massive consideration, if for no other reason than to share your work, which actually sort of takes me to the next one, unless you want to say something about that.
Well, I do want to say something because I know I'm like a broken record. Because again, how many people have an owned audience? I know it feels like everybody, but no, that's not true. These are, again, I think about a one-on-one. I'm going to use a basic example that has nothing to do with this, but everything to do with this. Think about how similar actors are, especially because most actors are trained similarly because we all take in the same sort of pop culture. Like, imagine going to one-on-one, being a casting director, and just everybody's the fucking same. Everybody's the same. What differentiates that white dude from that white dude from that white dude from that white woman from that white woman from that white woman from what differ, or black woman and black woman, black, like what differentiate, like everybody just kind of blends
100%.
together because they're truly, everybody is kind of the same, especially because I feel like people put tamper down their uniqueness because they're like, oh, I want to do it right. And
Well,
so,
what does that
you
mean?
know, well, I think about a fucking, it's funny. My parents, like, they watch, this is, can you tell the difference between anybody on fucking Law and Order? Like all the detectives, like they're all the same. Like all of the fucking, they're all the same exact person. They all act the same. They all have the same sort of thing. It's a style thing, but they're all exactly the fucking. I couldn't tell you, oh, is that the one on NCIS or is that the one on Blue Bloods, or it's all the fucking same. There are
Well,
very few unique actors. And so why does this relate to owned audience? Purely in the sense of, again, it is just how the sea of sameness. In the sea of sameness, are you doing anything that can slightly make you go, oh, the guy who blank, the girl who blank, the person who blank, anything that allows you to just stand out just a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, Victor Villar Hauser is doing a class. So who's Victor? Well, he's an acting coach and he's the real deal. I've worked with him before. His clients have appeared in Oscar nominated films and they've been recognized with awards like the Gotham Award and the Cannes Breakout Award. And recent client projects of his include Peaky Blinders, One Night in Miami, Grey's Anatomy, Ballers, Veep, Brooklyn, Feud, Betty and Joan, Insecure. I mean, his clients work nonstop. Just a little bit of a dated bio, I think. But he's offering a Zoom film and TV audition intro class. It's happening 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, and 5 p.m. GMT. Tuesday, the 23rd of April through May 14th. It'll be between 2 to 3 hours long, 4 weeks. It's $300. I recommend this class to any actors that are wanting to sharpen their process around attacking any moment of acting. Though this class is specifically looking at your self-tape habits, it will challenge you on how you break down material and bring consciousness to your bold choices, providing solutions, making you aware of how much agency you truly have. Wake up to your potential as an actor. Every week you'll be given an audition that you'll share with the class. You'll meet and you'll break down this material, and you'll introduce new habits. You'll then be given notes and asked to tape a callback, which Victor will discuss with you privately on a call after. I really believe in Victor. Like I said, I've taken this class, and it's helped me a lot. He's a phenomenal teacher. Email him. His email is below, but I'm going to say it's VV, so like Victor, so 2 V's, vvhclass@gmail.com. If you missed this one, I would still email him and say, hey, put me on the list. I'd love to be a part of, the alerts you send out for your next class. And we love Victor. And yeah, sign up for his class, guys.
9 months wondering who you'd be.
Well, friends,
Turns out I
that
always knew.
is truly one of my favorite voices. The one that you just heard. The wonderful Jessica Fontana recently released her first album, Everyday Special. The album bridges the worlds of theater and pop, and also includes an original song, part of which that you just heard, penned by Jessica with her husband Santino Fontana and Frank Galgano and Matt Castle, both of whom are also wonderful artists. The track inspired the album's title, of course. I've listened several times, no BS, to the whole album, and so should you. It's available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and of course the rest of the regulars. So go download Everyday Special by Jessica Fontana today. It'll make every day a little more special. But it's great. This is a good segue into my personal, I said this to you earlier, and I don't know if you agree, but my personal belief that the biggest way to stand out is through self-producing. And the reason why I think that this is the most effective way to stand out as an actor is because it becomes all your marketing content in a lot of ways, right? It literally becomes, when we're talking about growing an owned audience, and putting stuff out on socials, there are many ways to do that. Of course, it doesn't have to, of course, just rely around self-producing. However, in that weird middle game that legit actors, quote unquote, have to play. I'm not talking MT. I'm not talking comedy. I'm talking about the Luis Quinteros of the world, the people who are really playing that game. And actually, isn't this thing at Red Bull and isn't it his adaptation?
Oh yeah, he wrote it. It's his.
So this is my point. That self-producing is, in my opinion, is the most important singular way that you're able to stand out, because not only does it become marketing, but it also, to your point about, oh, that's the person that does that. How do we know? Because the 2 lines at the bottom of your resume ain't going to do it for me. If it says like great at badminton, okay.
Well, again, not to take it simplistically, but working is unique as an actor. Fucking working is unique. So if you're working, that's another way that, again, I know I'm kind of being really reductive here about the differentiating thing, but it's just my lens of viewing I stand out. If you're working, you're different. That you're already slightly different than everybody else. Yeah. So, you self-producing is how you literally take that in your hands and do that. I also think, no, what were you gonna say? No, I was gonna pivot to the next. Oh no, I think there's a couple more points here to make, which is because again, how does it help you stand out? Yes, it's useful in terms of marketing material, but how does it help you stand? We're talking about how does it help you stand out? Well. And here's some of the many ways. When you're self-producing, not only are you giving yourself the opportunity to create and share your work, and so people can see that, but one of the biggest ways that I think it helps you stand out is people look at you differently. That when you self-produce, writers, directors,
casting, people start to rethink how, to your point, oh, this is not just another actor. May I have some more, please? You're actually out there making. So this is, so if we're, and who does everyone always look up to? Michaela Coles. Yeah.
I have a client who's sitting down with the pretty big casting director that he would otherwise not really have access to, purely because he's self-producing. But I also think, per your point, two things I want to say. The story around, what the fuck? What's up with the balloons?
They love you. It's your.
Oh, well, like, what am I doing that makes that? The story, balloons? I don't know what. Congratulations. Happy birthday. But, okay, it is. I think about, what the perfect self-produced project was? Sling Blade by Billy Bob Thornton.
What?
Right? That's
what
like
was
the
the name?
perfect Sling Blade. You never heard of Sling Blade?
Yeah, of course.
Well, I think he wrote that. I don't think he directed it, but he produced. That was his brainchild. He was a waiter at a fucking LA. Like, that was his brainchild. The reason why Sling Blade is so interesting is because, for a couple reasons. Number one, talk about standing out. I mean, what a role, an iconic role. We call it Sling Blade. Like, that's an iconic role in the film canon. So if you're gonna self-produce something, you have to ask yourself, okay, great. Still, how can I take it to the next level in terms of either by the kind of material it is, so that it really allows me to like stand out, again, do something other people can't do. I would argue the people you put in it is another way that you can differentiate the project. But where I agree with you is it is more of an exciting story. Think about, I always use, especially in independent film. I would argue if anybody's trying to really make a career doing independent film, I think that, or film, not independent film. If you have the slightest inclination, you need to write, direct, and star in movies. And
but
because
you are so right about that from a film perspective, and I just want to say, Shaina Taub, she was nominated for
Shaina Taub, yeah.
Oh, interesting. I kept calling her Shaina, but someone kept telling me it was Shaina.
Who? Maybe it is Shaina. Did she tell you that?
No, I'm not going to say who it was but it was anyway.
Is it somebody who knows her?
Yeah.
Oh, so maybe it is Shaina.
So no, apologies, Shaina, because I would pronounce it Shaina too. Anyway, so
no, but that's the story. That's a exciting story.
And she was nominated for Tony Awards today for both book and score, and I think she might even be nominated herself
for actor. She was a contender. She didn't get nominated for actor, but she was a big contender. But that's
huge.
I heard a whatchamacallit. I heard a
podcast
for subs. That was the angle. The angle wasn't, hey, women voting. It was, come see a singular voice in musical theater.
Yep.
Like a singular somebody. She wrote and stars in this fucking play. So yes, you're 100%. If you are, if you are trying to get a movie into Sundance, it is different if you direct. If it's different, it's like if you wrote, directed, and starred in something, that is a story within itself. That is an exciting story, and you're right, in the theater too. I mean, that is an exciting story within itself.
And I just want to say,
self-producing your own work.
Because there are so many artists for whom I know that part of what overwhelms them about this idea is that if they aren't writers like myself, or if they aren't natural producers, that they feel a little stuck. There are so many ways to play this game. There are so many ways to do this that don't have to include you writing your own show. How? Well, why don't you go to your writer friends? And why don't you have some conversations with them about pieces? And then why don't you go to some producer friends? There's so many up and coming young producers who are worth engaging and connecting with that you can maybe take something with. But again, you got to bring something special to the table. But there are so many ways.
I guess that's where I'll say is like I think that if you're really, again, we're talking about different. Of course, it's always good to make art, and but you have to, again, we're talking about differentiation. So if
Right.
you're not, I think at the end of the day, produce the thing. Fuck yeah. And I would argue that if you're gonna have some other people write it or direct it, make sure that it's not just, make sure they don't get all the glory. Here's what I mean by that. You know, make sure that whatever the fuck you are doing in that is fucking bold and audacious and unique.
Absolutely.
If you're just acting in it, make sure that it is fucking as juicy as it possibly can be.
100%. 100%. 100%. Okay, so I wanted to briefly talk about just auditioning in relation to standing out as an actor. And the reason I did is because obviously this is one of the ways in which day to day most of us are actually thinking about this question, just to say.
Always hear this. Well, you always
Yeah.
hear it. It's like, people, how do you make your audition stand out, or how do you
Right.
and it's
exactly.
and it's all over the fucking place, because there are some, because this is where I think, okay, I want to be careful the way I word this, because it's not that casting is not an art form, or being agent's not an art form. It is in some ways, but it's a different kind of art form. But this is where where we listen to people, because what are you going to hear casting people say? They're going to say, you know, don't worry about standing out.
Right.
Just do the job.
Right.
But that's from their perspective, where they have a plethora of options. So of course they're going to say, you don't need to just do your job. Of course they're going to say that, well, that doesn't help me get a part. Just to be clear, that doesn't help me book. That helps your job, because you have a plethora of options. You could see thousands of people and you could just tell them, just be you. I'll pick the right person. That doesn't help. I never thought about it this way, but of course that doesn't apply to us. That has nothing to do with us, because that has to do with them. And from their perspective of, so yes, I think that you need to be asking, you know, when you get a fucking audition, I do think that, yes, you need to do the job. You need to do the job 100%. But you also need to be asking yourself, I think that you can't play it safe in terms of at least how you approach the material. I'm not necessarily talking about choices. I don't know how it translates. I don't know what people's processes are. But you need to ask yourself, how am I differentiating my audition?
I would argue that there's a this is sort of a balance question. So we I think I've shared maybe at some point before on a different episode, when I sent, as we know, my self-tapes to this one casting office, and this person gave me a ton of feedback. And some of the feedback that I got was actually a couple of things, and something we talked about today. One, the tech. I just want to say, for self-tapes, you know, one of the things he said was, you know, the lighting wasn't good enough, the sound wasn't good enough in some of these instances. And fair or not, when self-tapes is the moment, your setup and how it shows you off best comparatively, we might not like it, we might not feel like we're filmmakers, but bitch, you better look good, you better sound good and clear. Because think about if you're watching a movie and the sound it doesn't matter, you're like, it throws you. And if someone else's shit's gonna be tighter, that's gonna make a difference.
Well, I'm even gonna throw out there. Well, have you ever seen that guy's Stranger Things audition that went viral? I mean, like, back in the day. What's that guy? Well, I'm not going to name what the project is, because you need to know what it is. I just got an audition for today for a very, 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 very high profile project. And I got in because my friend knows the casting person, and
that's it. Don't throw. Wait, no, we have to say that for a second, because right. That's it. Before you get to the point about the tech stuff, when we talk about auditioning as well, and I just had a callback for a project yesterday that I know I was submitted by both my agents and my manager, couldn't get in. I emailed myself. LABOD used a mutual connection himself to say, would you put in a good word? We always hear my boring story. When I booked Les Mis, I didn't have an agent. 37 emails I sent to get in the room.
Again, differentiates you from other
Standing
people. Having people go to bat for you is, you know, most people don't have that 100%. But I think about this audition, and you know what it's for. my first impulse is like, I should be smoking a fucking joint. I should be like, I was like, because who am I going to be in this part? It's like I don't think I'm quite what they're going to be looking for, but like, I should be like, you know, I should be like smoking a joint, and like I'm at the fucking party and I see these guys. It's like, I'm kind of like the deadbeat. You know what the role is. What if I'm like the deadbeat older cousin who, like, is still at home? It's like, is that what they're looking for? I don't. But what am I going to do? I'm going to do what fucking 400 other people are going to do at the part.
Well, and
it's
this
like,
is
am I
what.
going to do? And yes, so do I risk them watching it being like, what the fuck? There is a story. I'm so sorry. He wouldn't mind me saying this. I'm not going to bleep out his name. Stephen Meyer booked a fucking movie. He did it at a ski lodge.
You told me this,
yeah. And he did it in a ski lodge, and his agents were like, "Don't send this in because there's the window behind him, and you can see people skiing."
Wait. It's not even that. He was outside against a brick wall with the mountain in the background. He wasn't even inside when he was filming it. He was outside.
And you could like see people skiing or something.
Yeah.
And they were like, "You cannot, like, what are you doing? Like, you can't fucking send this in." And he was like, "Just send it in. It's good work." And when he walked in, he got a call back, and they were like, "You're the guy from the fucking tape who had the brick wall and the people skiing in the back," literally. And so, yes, the thing is that's scary about standing out, which I think is going to be a theme, is that, especially with auditioning, is you have a chance of it, being polarizing, of it being really fucking crazy. It's like,
well, look, you. I didn't tell you this, and I also won't say what it was, but I had that callback yesterday, and
I'll bleep it out.
Yeah, and I've seen this happen before, where, and I actually, before I say this briefly, I just want to say the feedback I got from the casting person was, don't make the right choice. Meaning, don't make the choice you think we want to see. Make your choice. And so what I did in this part was, I sort of gave them like a probably non-musical, as much of a musical theater version as they would likely see from other people. And I literally saw there was a few people in the room who I saw got it and were like living for it. I could just tell because it was a comedy and they were like covering their mouths to not laugh because other people were laughing, but not quite. Like you could feel like there was like a divide about, what is this guy doing and do we love it? And that's not, I can't.
Why else? But this is what I mean, bro. This is what's scary about standing out, is because yes, there's going to be people who fucking hate what you're. I think your work should be if your work's not you can play it safe and hope that you get lucky. You play it safe and hope that they want the brunette version of it as opposed to the redhead version of it.
Right.
You can go down that route.
Right.
Or you can go there and I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. You know what this part is? I'm going to play it the exact opposite.
Yep.
Because that's going to be me in it. I can't I all of a sudden can't be like a young, hot, like, I'm not all of a sudden going to be like a young, hot, like, swarthy, like, I'm going to be the deadbeat cousin with like fucking anger management issues. That's what I'm gonna do. And it's like,
well, again, so make your own choices. The other two things that I want to say about this, is preparation. It might seem like an obvious one, but prep. And if you want to stand out when it comes to auditioning, the more prepared you are, the more confident you're going to be, the more comfortable you're going to be, the more free you are going to be to make the choices you want to make. And the truth is that, we know, especially for TV, sometimes the turnaround for the shit is so fast. And I always tell people who are like, do I really have to prepare all of this? I'm like, no, but if you don't, someone else will. So preparation is always going to be a differentiator. And the other one that I think is unique here that we have is this conceit of bringing that full persona into the room. So when we talk about the differentiators of yourself in terms of the story that you are telling. So actually take this audition you're talking about as an example. I know because you really are a character actor, so you really do characters, but meaning like you act, you do what an actor does. But like at the same time, bringing all of like LABOD, like that sense of self, and that vibe into the room, and not necessarily, again, re-curating. There's someone that I work with, who's this older queer woman, and she's been sort of leaning into that angle a little bit more. And it's like, yeah, even when you're auditioning for the guest star, and so it might be, she was thinking maybe taking more of a rocker vibe with a leather jacket in general. Okay, well, when you're auditioning even for that doctor for the guest star, of course you might give a nod to it, but how do you still bring, your full persona into the room?
1,000%. And look, it's scary. It's fucking scary, isn't it? It's just scary because at the end of the day, like, this is livelihood, and you could polarize somebody, but it's like, I think that if you want big results, you need to play a big game. That's just what the fuck it is, in my opinion.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And the last thing in relation to auditioning, I want to say, you get the things to go into the room, but I'll say, I cannot think of a singular audition that I don't look at who I have potential mutual connects with following whatever the gig might be. Because if people are able to say, hey, this person, just so you know, I heard they auditioned and they did great work, that does matter in a industry where people really, resources on every level are so few and far between. They want people they trust. And if you don't have any relationships, that can go a long way. Okay.
100.
So now let's talk about this, this really important one, which is essentially the value.
Think it's the most important.
Yeah, right. You were saying that. I see this here. So talk a little bit about what this is for you.
Well, you have to, again, all of what we're talking about here is has to do with us, right? But at the end of the day, if we accept that this is business and it's about impact, right? Even with all of this stuff, people come to you because they can't get what you have to offer anywhere else. That's ultimately what a differentiator, the best version of a differentiator is.
But clarify that. What does that point mean? Clarify that, because I know what it means.
So I would argue that it has to do with QER, which is the quantifiable end result. So I make people feel a certain way that they can't feel this way anywhere else. So let me give you an example. Let's take Luis. Let's take Luis in the classical theater and the rap hip hop stuff. Yes, those are all unique differentiators, that he's able to have all these skills, the story behind what he does, etc. Right? Those are all unique differentiators. However, I think that the reason why ultimately he stands out is because he is probably making people feel in that space a way that they've never felt before. That I would imagine, not to put, but it's like, oh, I feel don't have connection. Most people who are probably doing classical theater or watching classical theater don't have a connection to that culture of like rap, hip hop, whatever. And this is my way in. And so I'm able to feel like I'm there at the edge of what it is, right? Without going too far, but I'm still in my safe zone, right? It's still safe for me because it's not like
I want to frame this a little. I want to frame this for folks, because I don't think this is, I mean, maybe they'll get this, but so when you're talking about a quantifiable end result, what you're essentially talking about as a differentiator in this idea of standing out is that what you bring to the table, that what people can expect to get, i.e. QER, what they can expect
I would say feel and experience. Yeah.
What the experience that they can have of insert any person is clear, strong, consistent, unique, potentially new, is kind of what you're saying there with Luis, is like, oh, I know that, and the QER means I know that if I bring Luis Quintero in, that he's going to deliver blank. And this and with him in particular, it could be a wholly unique experience. Is that correct?
Well, let me give you let me I think an example of, and I don't think I would mind me saying this, but also seeing Luis's work, I think like an example would be like Luis subverts, but not too much. So it's still, when he does classical text, it's subversive and it's new, but it's not too far to the extreme. And I think that, so the end was, so basically he is able to deliver a feeling of when people watch classical theater. Like, I would argue that his audience is people who love classical theater. I think that that's really like his strong audience right now. He could always do more, but like he's got a strong audience there. What he delivers to them is, I know I'm going to get something, unique, new, different in terms of it's subversive. It's a different interpretation. However, it's not going to be so far where I feel not taken care of.
So it's accessible. It's an accessible newness.
It's accessible. I would say, I would even substitute what makes it unique is it's an accessible subversiveness. I think that he delivers on accessible subversiveness to that audience where it's not, and that's what makes it unique. So what do you deliver? What do people feel when they engage with your work that they're not going to experience other places? Yeah, I think that.
Well, and just to say, you ideally want whatever the brand is to elicit some sort of emotional response. I don't care what that brand is. I don't care if it's Whole Foods or Nike or the small dog business down the street from you or an actor. Think of your favorite actors. Think of Jennifer Coolidge. What response do you have to her? And I do think this is an interesting conceit for us as artists that is helpful for us to understand, oh, this is the effect I have on people. And if I can really strengthen that and make that something that people want to come back to time and time again, because of whatever the reason might be, that it just lifts up the potential for ongoing work and, for your audience to be excited by what you're doing. I think it's a fair point.
Let me give you an example. Jennifer Coolidge is a good example. I would argue that, what Jennifer Coolidge delivers on is she makes, this is such a simplistic, this is off my dome. She makes sort of like ditziness and like stupidity glamorous and okay. And we're all at times, we all feel a little ditzy and stupid and over our head. And we all feel that way. And we're ashamed for it. Whereas Jennifer Coolidge, I feel like, makes it not only okay to sometimes be stupid, but even glamorous, even hot sometimes to be, and actually smart at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it allows, I feel like when audiences, people who are really drawn to her, I feel like that's the feeling they get. I feel like it's a form of self-acceptance. And look, because people say this all the time, how do you want people to engage with your work? Well, I want them to accept themselves. That's not clear enough for me. What parts of themselves? I want to accept that sometimes I'm not the brightest bulb and I'm not plugged in and I'm not cool all the time. And actually that is cool. That's different. That is more specific. Inherent in all of this stuff is specificity too. So when people say, I want people to feel like they can feel like themselves, to me, that's not enough. Because what parts of themselves are they embracing? How? This is the other part of it.
Well, that's a good point, because if you take the Kim Hale example again, part of what Kim Hale is doing is chasing her dreams. It's never too late. So that's going to speak to a very specific. So to your point about, I want them to feel like they can be themselves. Okay, well, when people say that, to your point, I'm like, okay, well, you better be willing to share some shit. Or like, how do you tell that story in a way that goes, oh, this person can do that? Totally heard. Okay, so then where does all this begin? Damn. This idea of standing out as an actor, where does all this begin? Oh, well, what you have here, and I don't think it's wrong, is essentially what I'm going to start by saying is your why. Why are you doing this? Which for us is made up of the consideration of, mission, values, vision. Essentially, you got up today and you're doing this. Why? What do you value as a person and as an artist? And where are you going? And so talk more about why for you this is where this begins.
Well, I think it begins because, in terms of, if we're talking about standing out, okay. Well, I think that you have to be really clear, crystal clear and specific about what it is you're trying to accomplish and do and how you want people to feel and experience and what impact you want to have, and make sure that whatever it is you're crafting, yes, I could pierce my dick or walk around with, like, I could dye my hair, or I could do all of these sort of surface level things to differentiate myself, but making sure that it lines up with your, how do you make it authentic and sustainable? Well, doesn't line up with your mission, vision, and values, I would argue, is that because you don't want to put on something that is not you, or not what or that betrays, because I don't think it's sustainable.
Yeah,
if you're putting on something that's not going to make you happy. And also, I think it forces you. Any good business needs to ask themselves, if they're getting into business and wanting to be paid for what they do, you need to ask yourself, well, why am I needed? As opposed to, well, why not me? Well, look, that is one way to be. Look, you could say why me or why not me. I like both. I like why not me, but from a business perspective, yes, why do we need another actor? Why do we need we're never going to have a shortage. We're never going to have a shortage, right? So so you need to ask yourself, am I in this for reasons that do I want to make an impact? Do I want to do something different? I think that is not a bad question to ask yourself.
No. Well, because part of it is because in the next part of this is obviously if you're trying to begin to go, how do I stand out as an actor? And I come back to that baseline, what my why is. Am I trying to make a difference? What do I value? Absolutely. And the next, the other thing could be is what are my skills? Do I have unique skills, that actually could separate me?
Sure.
Unique creative values, which I hear you saying is a tricky thing to capture. And yet I do have to say that I do think, it's like I think that both of you and I both play in a similar game. I watched a tape of yours, the other day you had sent me for this musical. And it's just going to be unique because you are a unique energy.
Exactly.
But
I don't think I have unique skills. This is important to know.
You have the skills.
I think I'm a really good actor. I don't think I have unique skills. I have.
Well, but okay. I try not to talk about this because it kind of sounds so like I always like a dick, but I know for a fact that part of what I bring into a musical theater room is an actor's lens, an actor's perspective. So this job that I booked that, I'm doing in a few months, one of the things the director said to me, sent me a message and was like, thank you for just bringing a full person into the room, which is like obvious, no bullshit, like duh. But for many, not all, so no one, at me, but for a lot of musical theater performers, that ain't always the case, my girly.
Yeah.
And so I say it because I would argue that, for example, you have a beautiful singing voice. You really have a beautiful singing voice. And so that skill paired, you say gay?
Yeah, gay.
Prepare that skill paired with like your ability to act is a bit of a unique skill set in the world of
yes.
MT. You know what I'm saying?
But what I'm saying is, I guess, yes, you're 100% right. But I guess I'm saying is that you can have a unique, most actors have the opposite problem. Most actors think that their skill sets are what makes them unique, and it's simply not the case. there are, somebody can be a phenomenal actor and not have a unique skill set. They can be, because a unique skill set to me means it's unique. Now, but somebody could be a phenomenal actor, and so when they are emotionally available, which I would argue is not a unique skill set, or when they are really good at Shakespearean text, which I would argue is not a unique skill set, but they are unique, but the skill set itself is not unique. So someone can still be a phenomenal actor and not have fantastic skill sets, but they're just not unique skill sets. And so
no, I mean, a question, maybe a podcast episode for another time, is what makes something unique? Because I would also argue context, circumstance, etc. But I do hear what you're saying.
It's what you said about a unique. If you partner, again, that's why if you partner somebody who has a beautiful singing voice with, like, but they can also be, how many musical theater actors are actually dangerous? You watch them and you're like, ooh, they're subversive and dangerous. There's not many, but like, so, those combinations of skills I think are unique,
and then you're hitting on it, but more your point of view and your personality, and being able to, and, to not be afraid to identify what that is for yourself, because it'll only help you in informing, the choices you might make creatively.
100. And let me just say this. 100 point of view, I think, is the most precious thing we have.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's hard as art becomes more and more, art is super fascist, in my opinion, right now. It's like, there's just a lot of fascism in art making.
I agree.
And it's like, we have to make sure we toe these lines, and we make sure that we have these messages and these political agendas and blah, 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 but, I think that, again, when we talk about standing out, don't be afraid to have your big, bold, unique points of view. Always be open-minded. I think an artist should always be open-minded. My opinion that there's no inherent facts to art making, but, don't be afraid to, talk about Charles Manson being a potential CIA agent in the middle of rehearsal. Whatever the fuck, don't be afraid to talk about whatever the fuck you want, in terms of having unique point of views and having, weird shit to say or weird perspective on shit, because.
Well, yeah. But in the balance is like, I mean, absolutely. Don't be afraid to hide your differentiating points of view, but also, and this is the thing you said at the very beginning of all of this, also read the room. Does this additive for me, or does this take away? And if it's taking away, no problem. Do I give a fuck? Is that going to continue to help me or hinder me?
Well, sorry, and I'm gonna even just add to that, because it's like, even this audition now, selfishly, that I'm thinking about doing this spin on it. Read the room. Should I be doing that? Should I be? Well, the reason why I say yes is because they're going to see 1,000 tapes that are exactly the fucking same. They're going to see 1,000 tapes. They're going to see so, yes, me doing.
But what I probably would do? I probably would look at a few because this director is very famous, look at a few things from this person's past. What's their tone and style and approach? And how then could you take your unique spin and do the same thing? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. No, I think that's fair. Yeah.
A smidgen of research. Finally, and probably in some ways, not most importantly, but a real consideration is, once you do have a sense of whatever your story is, how are you going to tell this story not only most effectively, but most dynamically? Gary Vee, who we've been listening to a lot recently, talks a lot about essentially underutilized marketing tools, right? So he actually says, like, Instagram, this is interesting for artists. He's like, Instagram, it's too hard. It's too hard, he says. He's like, I wouldn't play there. His big thing right now is YouTube Shorts, Facebook, and TikTok. Those are his big platforms. And I think it's an interesting consideration, because when you're going, okay, well, then how do I marketing effectively? Think of yourself, think of us, think of most artists. What do they think? Instagram. So, but his
Well,
point,
I read Musk came out saying that Vine, Vine, I think is going to come back.
oh,
and
really?
Look, there will be a moment where that is incredibly underpriced. And what do I mean by underpriced in terms of differentiators? There's underpriced attention because there are people using it and there's not enough people taking advantage of it, though. They're using it, taking in content. So that's what you mean by, like, right now Instagram is, to break through on Instagram or even on TikTok. Yes, you could make any day you could make a reel that goes viral and that's it, right? So it's like, but
Well, but you know what the bigger macro thought for me here is that, and you and I've talked about this a bunch. It's not like you identify the perfect marketing strategy and then sit back for the next 18 years and twiddle your thumbs.
Exactly, right.
Part of what it is it, in order to stand out as an actor, as an artist, considering no matter however you market yourself, this should be a constant consideration. Okay. Right. How have the past 6 months been? What do I have to shift on? Is there a new trend I have to get on? It might not be online. Gosh, maybe you do a fucking flash mob, in the middle of the Sherman Oaks Mall or Times Square or London Square, whatever the hell wherever you are. What is going to be the thing that allows for you to go, I'm going to tell my story most effectively through these unique marketing strategies too, that isn't necessarily what everybody else is doing, but allows me to really, most importantly, grow an audience, which is what we continue to come back to.
Right, sure.
So, I mean, I think that's it. I think that's it, folks, in terms of this. It's a big topic, but I think, this everyone asked this question of what it means to stand out as an actor. So we hope some of this has been helpful. I'll kick off this week's comfort food performance. Okay. Because it's a recent one. I like my recent ones. So I was directing this workshop of this new Cumin and Diamond musical, and I brought in 2 actors that I'd worked with, including Shayna Blass, who yes. And she really, it's funny. Everybody who saw her performance in this reading was like, "Oh, she's a star." Michael Labaris was like, "Oh my God, she's like a young Bette Midler," and she really is so talented. Not that I forget it, but Shayna Blass is so talented, and so her performance in this reading this week that we did was mine. I just was sort of like looking at it with some awe, with some real respect for how comfortable and funny and sexy and bold she was. So Shayna, you're my comfort food performance this week.
That's good. My comfort food performance, I will say, this is hard. It's hard because I haven't seen a lot of good stuff recently. I guess I'm going to say, well, just because I was talking about Nathan Lane in the Birdcage. Have I said that? I was talking to Carolina about there are certain people who I would truly be. There's maybe 5 people who I would be truly like starstruck by if I saw them. I'll be Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Jim Carrey, Nathan Lane, Denzel Washington. Like those are the 5 people. If I saw them, I'd be like, and we were just talking about how amazing Nathan Lane is. I've never seen Nathan Lane on stage. I would love to see him in something one day, because I just think he's, I think he's incredible. I know you threw him out for like Midsommar or not Midsommar, for Beau's Afraid, I think, recently, but Nathan Lane is just.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. That's what I did say.
And the Birdcage especially is just.
Yeah, he's great.
Incredible.
He's great honestly. Well, folks, this has been Creative Risk, where we talk about art, entrepreneurialism, and everything in between. Thank you. Goodbye.
We hope that you enjoyed today's episode of the Creative Risk Podcast. If you did, a review goes a long way. So make sure that you're following us on whatever platform you listen to. And if you're catching this on YouTube, be sure that you like and subscribe so that you can get alerts when new content drops. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, subscribe to us. And if you want ongoing new content that's exclusive, you can't get anywhere else, follow us on Patreon, subscribe to our Patreon for as little as $5 a month. All right, thank you, friends.